Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special edition of Blitzkrieg. Now, we are going to have an Indo-Pakistan debate today, and the subject of the debate is simple. You see, Pakistan says that FATF is hounding Pakistan. That Pakistan has nothing to do with terrorism, nothing to do with funding of terrorism, nothing to do with money laundering. And yet, when asked if Osama bin Laden is Shaheed or a martyr, that is what they say. They call him a hero at various platforms and refuse to condemn him as a terrorist. And there are various other things that Pakistan has been doing, and this is what we are going to discuss today. I have with me Sushant Sareen from the Observer Research Foundation. He is a senior fellow there. Raja Faisal, journalist. Raja, very warm welcome. Sushant, a very warm welcome to our show.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
The first question, Raja Faisal, which I'm going to ask you is, Raja, you're a journalist, all right? And what I want to ask you is that I see a difference of opinion in what Pakistan says and what Pakistan does. And I'll give you very quick 2 examples. And I'd like your comment in 2 minutes. Uninterrupted 2 minutes I will give you. Number 1. You see, when it is a question of calling out for rights of Muslims, Pakistan will officially and even unofficially on media, your prime minister, etc., will say that, okay, there is a problem happening in Kashmir, there is a problem happening in Palestine, there is Islamophobia. But when asked about the Uyghur Muslims in China, everybody keeps quiet. In fact, Imran Khan has gone on record to say that he does not know what is happening there at all. Right? I'd like your comments on this, please.
That's a very valid question, a question which is being asked from Prime Minister Imran Khan from everywhere. I believe the government has some kind of, intel on it, or there's a smear campaign going on against the Chinese, and especially when it comes to CPAC and China, collaborating with Pakistan, owing to the fact that right now we are seeing a trade war going on between US and China. And in recent past, we saw Hong Kong was considered as an issue, which wasn't an issue, but it was being highlighted throughout the world, especially on the Western media. Same is happening with the Uyghur Muslims of Xinjiang province. There is no problem in the area, and if crackdowns are happening in Xinjiang, then they are mainly on ETM, East Turkestan movement, and they are declared as the terrorist in there. And I think if the government of China is having a sort of crackdown on them, then Pakistan won't be having any problems with that. Why? Because in very recent past, Pakistan has faced terrorism, especially in the shape of TTP, who were anyone can say that they were home ground terrorists, and Pakistan had to deal with them. Same is the case with the ETM. And I think, Major Gaurav, you must understand that right now, if we are seeing so many Muslim names amongst who happen to be journalists and analysts throughout the Western media, suddenly they have started highlighting this issue. And in past, they have never been bothered about it, but suddenly they have started talking about this issue. So there is something fishy, and government sees it, and even the analysts in Pakistan, including me, I see it as something fishy.
Okay. So, Sushant, there is this huge conspiracy against Muslims. There is this huge conspiracy against Islam. There is a conspiracy against Pakistan. There is a conspiracy, and a few more conspiracies. Now, Sushant, my question to you is simple. Raja Faisal says that there is no problem as far as the Uyghur Muslims are concerned. 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims in re-education camps. A child sent to jail because his name was Muhammad. And all these are covered by Al Jazeera, which is essentially funded by Qatar, which is a Muslim state, all right? By BBC, by CNN, by Fox News, by Washington Post, by New York Times, by the Chicago Tribune, by Time Magazine. Very same newspapers, when they say Israel, when they say Palestine, when they say Kashmir, people like Raja Faisal say, this foreign magazine has written about Kashmir, and so India must be held to account. Or this foreign magazine has spoken about Palestine, so Israel must be held to account. Now, I'm going to ask you, Sushant, why do not they apply the same standards? Why don't they apply the same standards to Uyghur Muslims? After all, isn't Pakistan Islam ka killa? Isn't Pakistan the only nuclear weapon Islamic state in the world?
Islam ka killa and the fortress of Islam and all that other stuff which these guys keep talking about the Ummah and everything. That's a tagline. I don't think it's to be taken seriously, number one. Number two, I think what Mr. Faisal, when he says that people have suddenly started talking about it, the fact of the matter is that people have been saying that injustices have been happening in Xinjiang. So the thing is that, this is not something which is happening suddenly. This has been happening for a few years now, at least 5 or 6 years, since people have started pointing out the kind of concentration camps, the kind of public punishments, not public punishments, collective punishments which are being visited on people, families being picked up, put in jail, separated for 2 years in these re-education camps. This has been happening for some time, and the Western media has been highlighting it. So it's not all of a sudden. It's not something which has happened simply because the trade war started and all of that. Secondly, I think with ETIM, nobody would have any problem if the Chinese were only cracking down on ETIM. I think Mr. Faisal should understand that even the US has banned the ETIM and many of the other terrorist groups. So I don't think there would be any problem on that. But there would be a problem if you, for example, say that, and I wonder if Mr. Faisal agrees with it, what is called the Sinicization of Muslims, that they can't keep beards, that keeping Roza is forbidden, Azan is forbidden, Eid festivities are restricted, or for that matter, minarets in mosques are going to be redesigned according to Chinese features. If Mr. Faisal agrees with it, I don't have any problem. But then I come down to the basic issue of why, the Pakistanis don't scream and shout when it comes to China. And my understanding of Pakistan tells me that, Islam is a strategic tool for these guys. They have no real love lost for Islam, frankly speaking. Jahan se paisa aata hai, wahan par Islam hai inka. So, for example, if there is an issue of blasphemy vis-a-vis France, their love for the Prophet takes a backseat for the money and the profits that they make from their dealings with France or with EU, right? Otherwise, if the Prophet was so important for them and his azmat was so important, then they would actually sever connections with France. Similarly with China, similarly in many other cases when these issues crop up. So Islam is a strategic tool, one, to control their own people and oppress their own people and colonize their own people and make better Muslims of Baloch and Pashtuns and others. That is one. Secondly, it is a nice tool to try and keep the country together. Number three, it is a good diplomatic tool to connect with the Arabs from whom they get the money and where they go and work. And then it's a good tool to keep talking about Islamophobia to, directed against India and stuff like that. So I would imagine that is where all this comes from.
Thank you, Sushant. I'll go back to Raja Faisal. Basically, he's saying that you use Islam as a tool. Now, if there was a case of blasphemy against France and so many Pakistanis died from the Lawite movement and they were killed in Lahore, why did Pakistan not break off relations with France? Somewhere I think money trumps religion, because there was a protest against Islam, against France, I beg your pardon, and suddenly that protest absolutely disappeared. There was no protest then. There was no protest. Suddenly it ended one fine day without any action. Has France taken back its words? Has France promised that there will be a blasphemy rule? Has France taken back its ambassador? Has France said that there will no longer be any case of blasphemy and they will prosecute those who do blasphemy in France? They haven't said anything of that sort. So similarly with China. And Sushant also said, you see that it's not that the Uyghur Muslim issue is being managed or brought to the limelight right now. It's been going on for quite some time. Now I need to understand from you, Raja Faisal. I'm going to stay away from this issue for a while and ask you one direct question. Right? Osama bin Laden shaheed hai ya dahshatgard hai? Is he a martyr or a terrorist?
I would not call him a terrorist until it is proven that he is a terrorist and he was involved in 9/11. I think you must understand that there was, he wasn't taken to any court, and he did not go through the American legal system where he would be put in one of the courts and he would be tried, and then he would be, his killing would be justified. So it did not took place, and I think if it would have taken place, then it would have been easier for me to understand why he's being considered as a terrorist. But if it did not take place, then a person as sane as I consider myself, I think I would not accept him as a terrorist until then.
So Raja, tell me, when Al-Qaeda puts up this fact on the website that yes, they were responsible for 9/11 and they were responsible for the death of 3,000 American citizens. And it is a self-confession on the internet, which they post. And there is a congratulatory message by Osama bin Laden to his boys saying that, well done, you struck America in its heart, you stabbed America through the heart with a dagger. You don't think that is evidence enough?
Major Gaurav, I think you are someone who's always hawking upon these kind of things when I talk about Cambridge Analytica, and you must remember that Cambridge Analytica was hooked up by.
Hold on, Raja, hold on. I'm not asking about Cambridge Analytica. Please don't divert the question. I'm asking you: is Osama bin Laden shaheed or a terrorist? Is he a martyr or a terrorist? You haven't answered my question.
As you have mentioned that there were evidences, there were his voice notes, so there were his videos. So I was about to say that there were videos and voice notes and which were well crafted by Cambridge Analytica. And I think we need to keep that fact, in the back of the head as well when we're talking about Osama bin Laden or terrorism or whatever.
So Sushant, let me ask you one question. Raja Faisal has made his stand clear. As far as he's concerned, Osama bin Laden is a shaheed. All they have to do is suffix Osama bin Laden, Rahmatullah, that they will do, like they do for Allama Iqbal. Very good. Now, I want to ask you something, Sushant. My question is simple. Should Pakistanis be complaining about FATF? Should Pakistanis be complaining that, people say they're terrorists? Because on the floor of the parliament, forget about Raja Faisal, he's a citizen, he's a journalist, he's entitled to his views. But on the floor of parliament, if you say that, Osama bin Laden is a shaheed, their foreign affairs minister says that I'll let that pass. They allowed a ceremony for the burial of the 26/11 attacker who was hanged in India, Ajmal Kasab. But at the same time, the same people who gave permission for that prayer meeting for Ajmal Kasab were also saying that no, Ajmal Kasab is not a Pakistani, he's actually an Indian Hindu, and this is a conspiracy of the Hindus against Pakistan. So clearly a lot of confusion, but I want to ask you what your comments are. Forget about Ajmal Kasab for a minute. I want to know, why do they keep on saying these things? Don't they realize that it is detrimental for their own country?
I don't think they think it's detrimental to their own country, and they actually believe in this nonsense. I think Mr. Faisal actually believes in this. He believes that terrorism is jihad. It is the service of Islam being done by terrorism. When you are killing kafirs, when you are killing non-believers, he actually believes in it. He tries and disguises it. So does Imran Khan. So does Shah Mahmood Qureshi. Which is why there is this reluctance to call Osama bin Laden a terrorist. Now, Mr. Faisal, I really want that this clip and his defense of Osama bin Laden should be sent to all missions, Western missions, so that people know that if this guy ever asks for a visa, what kind of a man he is, what his thinking is, what his mindset is. I think it will be very useful, because he and others of his ilk are basically terror sympathizers. And then when FATF comes in, you see, half these people have not read anything. They don't read what the FATF is saying. They don't understand what the FATF recommendations are. I'll just take a minute to explain. The FATF operates on objective criteria. The Pakistani habit is that you try and throw dust into other people's eyes. So the first time the FATF laid out an objective criteria for them to follow, what they did was they did some paperwork and they said we have done everything. Then the FATF started questioning them on the specifics of what they had done and the results of what had come out. And they were found extremely wanting. So over a period of time, now they've tried to, rejig the whole thing and show that they're actually working on this. Problem is that they still not delivered, even on the paperwork, they haven't delivered on everything so far. If you look at the last FATF report, out of 11 outcomes, they were failing in 10 and only moderately compliant on 1. Out of 40 recommendations in the latest FATF report, the APG report, they are still lagging behind in 7 or 9 issues, criteria, okay, recommendations. When you go into the details of that, it becomes very clear that these guys are not up to the mark where they can be taken off the FATF. So clearly, this whole conspiracy theory, which they rebuild to try and defend themselves, to try and justify their attraction for jihadism, for terrorism, for brutally killing other people, and actually savoring those massacres, delighting in the blood flowing of innocent people, that is their mindset. Which is why when people in India say we can make friends with these fellows, you can't make friends with these fellows. Yeah, it's not possible. And I think the sooner we wake up to that reality, the better it is.
All right. So Raja Faisal, let me ask you one question here. Let us say tomorrow, because you're saying that you're so friendly with China, and China, has invested a lot of money in CPAC, and obviously you've given them a clean chit because strategic alliances, strategic partners. Whether they're doing something with the Uyghur Muslims or not, I'll keep that aside. Let's say Israel were to give Pakistan $50 billion and say we want to invest. Yeah, Israel has money. Let's say they say we want to give $50 billion. What is going to be your position on Palestine?
Well, first of all, we don't have any relations with Israel. So if
Israel is
wants
giving
to
you $50
put money,
billion, hypothetical question, $50 billion, Israel says we will invest over next 10 years in Pakistan. Now tell us what's your position on
not
Palestine.
at all. There is no chance. First of all, the only countries that has relations with Pakistan, they come forward for FDIs, or if they want to invest in Pakistan, of course they are the ones who do it. But it is unquestionable. I mean, we would never accept it. We would never allow it.
Raja, you know that FDI in Pakistan is a scam. You're aware of that, right? It's a scam. Except for China, nobody invests in Pakistan. And those are loans. How many countries have invested in Pakistan, Raja? Please tell me, apart from China, how many? And what is the value of those investments?
Well, there are Turkish, there are Middle Eastern countries who are interested in Pakistan. There are several other countries that are.
Okay, what has Turkey done? Please tell me, what is the volume of investment? Please tell me. I'd like to understand.
I don't have the figures. I don't have the figures right now, but
Yes.
in energy sector, and
I'll tell you why.
recently in energy sector,
I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you this. Turkey has made very minimal investments inside Pakistan, right? And the only investment it has made is it has given you Ertugrul Ghazi. And tell me, sir, right? There are weaker Muslims from America writing reports every single day. They're talking about forced abortions. They're talking about people who cannot pray. You're saying all those reports are fake. It's a conspiracy by the Western media to defame China, because China is obviously the sole leading superpower of this world now, as per Pakistan. You're saying all that is a conspiracy. Nothing is happening. Everything is good.
Major Gaurav, there were times when families of the terrorists who were involved, who were present in, obviously they were Taliban plus Al-Qaeda, their families, they had to suffer a lot as well. And their reports were there as well. There were kids, so many kids who were killed in drone attacks. There were so many incidents in the world where children, where women, where elderly, they were killed by the American
Raja,
I'm
talking about China. I'm talking about China.
Yeah, you are. I know you are talking about China, but if they were hurt, if them Muslims were hurt,
China. China.
This very Western media
China.
did not highlight that.
Raja,
but
China.
now,
Raja, China. Raja, don't do this.
the problem is with ETM. And I think China has every right to counter its terrorism. If terrorism is taking place in Xinjiang, then China has every right to counter it.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you. So, Sushant, my question to you is, China has every right to counter terrorism, and I agree with the Chinese. No water off my back, I agree with the Chinese. But according to the same Pakistani logic, Indians don't have a right to counter terrorism in Kashmir, and the Israelis have no right to counter terrorism which emanates out of Palestine.
Gaurav, if that is precisely the problem. Now, for these guys, Islam is fungible. I told you right in the beginning, for Pakistanis, Islam is a tool, it's fungible. So, when it comes to the Chinese, because the dana pani, the roti pani is running from the Chinese money which is coming in, and these guys are basically a client state of the Chinese. I can use some more colorful language, but I'll avoid to describe these fellows. So clearly they can't take on the Chinese. So whatever the Chinese do is justified in these fellows' eyes.
I'll give Raja Faisal last question to you, 30 seconds, and then I'm wrapping up this program. Or maybe you can take a minute, Raja. Okay, tell me, is Hafiz Saeed a terrorist or an NGO worker?
Well, to me, he's not a terrorist, because whoever is fighting against the Indian army in Kashmir, whoever is fighting against the Indian army, whether it's PLA, whether it's Pak army, whether it's Burhan Wani or its associates, or it's Hafiz Saeed, to me personally, he's not a terrorist. He's a freedom fighter. Because if Indian rogue army, whatever it is conducting in Kashmir...
Faisal, no, please, Faisal, hold on. Faisal, first of all, you've got to get rid of that accent. It's not from Lahore, it's from someplace else. Hold on. I want to tell you one thing. You say that you support Hafiz Saeed because he's fighting against Indian army, right? All right? You support Hafiz Saeed. He's not a terrorist, he's a freedom fighter. He's a Pakistani citizen who operates out of Pakistan, which means that you consider him a hero because you called him a freedom fighter, and large segment of the population consider him a freedom fighter and a hero, right? Similarly for us, the Baloch are freedom fighters. So when the Baloch attack Pakistani armies, can I be allowed to call them freedom fighters also? Thank you, Sushant. Thank you, Raja Faisal. I'm absolutely out of time. Thank you, both of you gentlemen from Pakistan and from India, for joining. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for seeing Blitzkrieg. I'll join you again with another set of guests next week. Till then, from my team and I, Jai Hind.